me hear you one more time.
Let me hear you one more time, Mid-State Oil.
All right.
Time to clap. Time to clap. Time to clap.
All righty, here we are. Welcome back into another episode of Where the Game Lives On, the official podcast of the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. If you've joined us recently, we've had several guests on. Just the original crew today, myself and my co-host Byron Shive. We doing all right this morning?
Yes, sir. Good to be back in the studio.
I like being in the studio. I really do.
Frozen tundra of the Where the Game Lives On.
We talk about the temperature in here a lot, and I feel like people are like, what are they talking about?
It's because it's about 7 degrees in here right now. So
yeah, it's nice and comfortable. It just, you really feel it. Makes you feel alive. It's middle of March. Big event coming up here in about a week and a half time. I want to talk a little bit about March Madness, though. How's your bracket looking so far after the first weekend?
I honestly have no idea, but not good.
You did fill brackets out, yeah?
I filled a bracket out for the family group, whatever, and I know that after the first round games, out of 10 people, I was in dead last. So
yep. You will have it. You will have it. But you did say something last week that was perhaps the only good piece of insight that we had on last week's episode with Michael Watson. You said the Kentucky Wildcats could win the whole thing or they could lose in the first round. Sure enough. Mm-hmm. Lost in the first round.
I watched them all year.
Terrific performance by, what was that kid's name?
Golke.
Yeah. Yep. He was at a Division II for a while. Ended up going to Oakland as a grad transfer. Has shot 6 2-point attempts all year, I think, is what I heard. So big Jimmer Fredette type guy, but he was hot. Mm-hmm. He was hot. That's what happens, though. That's why the tournament is what it is, because you can just run into somebody like that. I loved what he said after, the game. He's like, "Hey, I'm not a NBA prospect, and a lot of guys on their team are, but I can compete with them any day."
He hit some shots that, I mean, I'm not saying that Kentucky played great defense. They didn't, but there were shots he hit that there's nothing that could have been done.
Yeah.
He was in the zone. So,
well, I've made the mistake of filling up too many brackets. You can't keep them all straight. But the brackets,
you're one of those guys.
Yeah. I get a little taken away with it.
Yeah, I've got a bracket that's well, what about the bracket? No, I've got 7. Well, my one bracket.
So my only bracket that exists in the physical world, is ones that we filled out here. I printed some off. You were out one day. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was Casey.
I saw him on the door. I didn't have him.
So the one that I actually wrote pen to paper on, I got 12 of the 16 correct for this week.
That's the craziest thing about the Sweet 16 is this whole season was just filled with upsets and all of this parity, and everyone was talking about how teams were losing, and even the best teams had 8 and 9, all these losses, and it was supposed to be this big wild tournament. And you look at the Sweet 16, and it's pretty chalky. I think there's one double seed. North Carolina State is the only double digit seed still alive.
Correct.
I think two of the regions are, you have the 1, 2, 3, and 4 seeds. Yeah. So it's which sets up for a really fun weekend coming up.
It should be interesting.
But it was supposed to be this wild tournament. It really wasn't. So
in retrospect, no. Yeah. I mean, I didn't have NC State. I never would have thought Clemson would have made it out of their first 4. Well, they weren't not a first 4, but just that region.
Which they beat Baylor, which, you mentioned Kentucky. And of course, there's a lot of stuff going on with, will Calipari be back? And if not, who they're hiring. And for anyone that follows Kentucky, they know that the AD is in love with Scott Drew, the head coach at Baylor, who of course won a national title. But if you look at Baylor, speaking of Clemson, Baylor hasn't gotten out of the first weekend of the tournament in the last 10 years, like 7 or 8 of those years. And so anyway, they're fell flat again. But
yeah.
Clemson, ACC, they got 4 of the 16. Is that right?
Yeah. So, which I made that mistake.
That was a down league this year, supposedly. So,
and apparently they just beat up on each other is what it was. I definitely undervalued the ACC. I also undervalued the Pac-12, which looked pretty decent. I'm trying to think of the 14. NC State, Clemson. I don't think I had Zaga. And then there's one more, which it was probably one where I picked an upset or something.
Which, you had 2 regions had the top 4 seeds advanced.
Yeah.
Or maybe that may not be right. I know one did. But then you had a couple 5 seeds, which is, they beat a 4. It's not that big of a upset. So, Clemson was a 6, NC State was an 11 seed, and I think you had 2 5s and the rest were chalk. So it was
surprised to see none of the 1s and 2s go out this year. That was kind of surprising. I think it was San Diego State was the other team that I didn't have advancing.
Were they 5?
They were a
5.
They beat Yale because Yale upset Auburn. A lot of people thought Auburn could make a Final Four run. Yep. So that was another big upset from the tournament. So they still kind of happen,
you had every year you got the 5-12. I think there were a couple 12s that won. I mean, you did have some upsets. Of course, Oakland won. Yale beat Auburn. But what you didn't have this year is those, 13 and 14 seeds actually making the Sweet 16. That's what you normally get each year. And this year there was only one, like I said, North Carolina State.
Yeah. I'm trying to look here. It looked like all the 1s and 2s. They won really handedly and then had good wins in the second round. So,
who's your Final Four then? Based on the Sweet 16.
Well, all of my Final Fours are still alive at this point. I've got
all of my Final Fours in my 18 brackets. That
you're 100% right. I'll own that. But Houston, Purdue, UNC, who's got a tough road, if you ask me, and then Illinois. Actually, I think Illinois has been hot. I think they might be able to beat UConn.
I think I had UConn, Arizona, Purdue, and Houston. Yeah, and I had Houston beating UConn in the championship. Is that possible?
Yeah, 3 1s and a 2. They're all still alive.
I think that's what I had.
Yeah,
in my bracket.
You always kind of, at least when I'm filling out my bracket, I always kind of look at that second weekend, that Sweet 16.
North Carolina is really good. If I'm North Carolina, I don't like the fact that I've got to play potentially, of course, you have to win to get there, but potentially I have to play Arizona in Los Angeles.
Who is that region? That is the West region.
Arizona would be playing basically at home if they make the Final Four.
True. Yeah. That region, the West region, Clemson, Zona, Alabama, UNC. I think any of those 4 could possibly pull it out. And I'm not a Clemson. I thought I took Clemson to lose to New Mexico State in the first round.
That's a run and gun Sweet 16 there. Those all 4 like to get up.
Which didn't UConn? They made a Final Four and they were like a 6 seed last year, which is what Clemson.
I think last year they were a 3. They have won a national title as a 6 seed. I think they were a 3 last year.
We'll see. We'll see. The madness continues. We've got our bracket challenge going on.
Home games in Boston, UConn. I don't see anybody beating UConn up there.
Yeah, that's true.
Who do they get?
San Diego State. When they get the winner of Illinois, Iowa State, which is now, 2 hot teams.
Illinois, Iowa State, both of them. That will be a game, and then the winner of that game can give UConn a game, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in terms of who am I rooting for? Don't know that they can win it, but whoever wins the Purdue Gonzaga game, I just feel like. First of all, I grew up in Indiana when Bob Knight was king, and so nobody rooted for Purdue, so I always felt bad for Purdue. And then, of course, they haven't been to a Final Four since 1980. They're coming off their Virginia curse, losing as a 1 seed last year to a 16, and it seems like they've been knocking on the door several years. I think Virginia beat them the year that Virginia won the national title. I think they beat Purdue in the Elite 8 to get to the Final Four in a overtime game that Purdue should have won. So they've just kind of been there, and so I'll root for them.
They've looked very good,
but Gonzaga, of course, they've also been knocking on the door and haven't quite pulled it off, and so I wouldn't mind seeing them win.
Zaga has surprised me because usually in the regular season it's just them and St. Mary's, and there's generally one team. If there's 2, it's them 2 that come out of the Mountain West or Western Conference,
some WAC or something.
Well, St. Mary's had Gonzaga's number in the regular season, but then
twice.
St. Mary's loses in the first round. Gonzaga's made a run out of the second weekend of the tournament, so it surprised me.
This was a quote unquote down year for Gonzaga. I mean, they're a 5 seed. They've been a 1, 2, or 3 for the last decade, and then here you go. I mean, Mark View's just a good coach, I think. So
yeah. But we will see. We will see how it shapes up.
I'll root for the winner of that game. Houston. I mean, that was a brawl against Texas A&M.
Yeah.
But
ended up scoring 100 in that game. Houston
so
did.
they will play Duke.
Yep.
So please, all of America is rooting for Houston, and then you got NC State against Marquette. So I think the Duke Houston winner is going to the Final Four. So
yeah, I know very well could, but I don't know. I'm never counting out Shaka Smart. I like him.
Yeah,
he's a Wichita State right there back in the day. At least back in the day for me.
Did he play there?
He coached at Wichita State with
Shaka Smart.
I think so, right? Was that VCU?
He was at Virginia.
Oh,
he took VCU to the Final Four.
Oh my goodness!
2011, because it was the year that Butler went to the Final Four, and then Connecticut beat Kentucky, and then Connecticut beat VCU. I believe. No, they beat Butler for the national championship.
So who am I confusing him with? Because who was the head coach of that team with like Ron Baker and like when they were still in the Valley?
I can see him. Real hothead.
Yeah, it's like on the tip of the tongue, but
Greg something.
Yeah, we'll find out. Let's get into some sports news. What's happening around the sports world? Something interesting out of the baseball world before the season's really kicked off here. The whole deal with Shohei Ohtani. What do you make of that? He fired his interpreter,
Greg Marshall.
He fired his interpreter and. As reports state, had to settle a gambling debt of about 4-point-something million.
Well, there's also reports that the actual number is closer to 15 to 20 million. So
what?
It's just, I don't know. I don't have enough info on
neither
the
do
whole
I.
deal.
I'll tell you what I'm looking at, though.
It sounds like, well, there's one of two things happened. Either the interpreter was placing the bets on behalf of Ohtani and now that it's come out, and so they've got to throw the interpreter under the bus, or the interpreter got in over his head and Ohtani's just a good friend and bailed him out because he can. I don't know.
Sounds like a fall guy to me.
It's
become a serious problem in the sports world, and we've already started seeing a lot of guys getting suspensions.
But is it shocking? I mean, when you're tying, I mean, gambling is everywhere now. I mean, even in every state at some point in the next decade is going to legalize, even Missouri. It's been sitting there to be voted on. It will happen at some point, just as it has in other, quote unquote conservative states that, whatever. And it comes with a lot of influx of money, but you got a whole other set of issues, even with even golfing. There's strict things with, obviously we manage a professional golf tournament, and, there's right now it's not legal in the state of Missouri. In other states where tournaments are played, it is legal, and there's strict, things. But
well, and I hate to bring this one up, but just Monday, the NBA said they were opening an investigation on Jonte Porter.
Yeah.
And basically the gist of it there was unusual betting on multiple occurrences where they were taking prop bets on his unders for stat lines. Yeah. And both games he
left
was like,
the game early.
He was out early for like a illness or an eye injury or something like that. So I don't know.
But even like if you recall, I think it was last year, was it Alabama baseball coach, the University of Alabama.
Yeah.
Like he had a friend, allegedly had a friend placing bets at the window at a Cincinnati Reds baseball game.
Yeah.
I guess had gotten word that, the stud pitcher or somebody was not going to start that evening.
Insider trading.
Yeah, basically insider trading type stuff. But my point is that the state gambling associations saw this happening and shut down betting on Alabama. I mean, the oversight is just unreal. How would they do this? But I'm afraid that gambling's just gonna. That's what when you hitch the wagon. You got to take the whole thing.
The ball has already started rolling down the hill. But whenever I look at kind of the climate amongst things like this, two things that really come to mind for me. One's a little less obvious. NIL, can we give Reggie Bush his Heisman back? And then two, with what we're talking about more on topic, can we just put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame? Like, come on, with what we're being faced with right now, we're gonna leave him out.
Which did you, speaking of Pete Rose, did you see what he said in the last few days?
I don't think
he was
so.
appearing somewhere and he made some comment about how he wished he'd had an interpreter back in the day or something like that.
Fitting. So, did you have a good weekend?
No.
No.
Kentucky lost on Thursday, so no.
Yeah, that is.
It was pretty awful, actually. So
I went to the Blue Room Comedy Club.
Yeah.
Very interesting. They had one of the lead ups to the headliner was Yakov Smirnoff out of Branson. He was not wearing the traditional garb. He was in like a Letterman jacket, but very funny. Very funny. I'd never been to like a live comedy show, so it was very interesting.
I've been to the Blue Room once before. I went on a date night with the wife. It's been a few years ago, but had a good time. Do have tickets to see Nate Bargatze at Great Southern Bank Arena in June.
Yeah, that's big.
He is the funniest guy on the planet.
Yeah,
and can't wait to see him. So the
only time I almost went was there's a guy named Matt Rife. Do you know that one off the top of your head? Holiday was like, "Oh, I want to go see this guy," and I had no idea who he was. Come to find out, he's got a lot of female followers.
Yeah,
very good looking guy, and now he's basically been like canceled. But I tried to get tickets for her to see him, and it was like 6 months in advance. Yeah. Already sold out. So I was like, "Oh, sorry, can't help you there." We've got some NFL meetings going on. On Monday, the NFL announced a new ruling, a ban of the hip drop tackles, or as I like to call it, just a tackle. So the NFL is now the no fun league. But I'm not in favor of it at all. I mean, I look at this ruling and I'm like, what else are you going to take away? I'm not opposed to everything. I think the NFL has made a lot of really good rule changes. I think the proposed kickoff change is going to be pretty interesting, where they're going to the XFL sort of look where guys are 5 yards apart on kickoff. But I think this is just getting too technical. I really do. I think it's all in the name of safety, right? And improving the game and keeping players on the field. But
you're talking to a Florida State football fan whose season was wrecked by a drop tackle. Jordan Travis, quarterback, scrambles out of the pocket, runs up the field. Defensive lineman grabs him from behind, does the drop tackle.
Yeah.
Legs shattered, season's over, and we know how that wound up for Florida State. So, that being said, I understand. Where does it stop? I don't know. They got rid of the chop blocks. They got rid of, you can't dive at the knees and things like that. When I was coming up, being taught how to tackle in terms of, you do the whole wrap up, but when you're a 150-pound cornerback like I was back in high school, or safety, you got some fullback barreling at you. You're not wrapping him up.
You're biting ankles.
You're going for the legs.
Yeah,
and so you wrap the legs, but part of that is you're not wrapping necessarily ankles. You're wrapping around the knees and that sort of thing. And so I don't know.
My problem is it's just it's too gray. It's going to be too subjective. And what I thought whenever I first saw it is, how easy is it going to be for a guy like Travis Kelce to be running over the middle? And he's obviously got like a linebacker chasing him who's a little slower. And now he can just, whenever he feels that tackle getting initiated, he can basically just fall back on that defender and make it look like it's a sort of hip drop tackle.
I don't know that that's entirely the case.
Here's what's going to happen though. Here let me give you.
It's the same thing with the horse collar tackles. I mean, I feel like that there's a reason that they got rid of those, and I feel like watching a game, there's very few times that they miss that call. And a lot of times you think, oh, that was a horse collar, and then they show the replay and it wasn't called, and they got the call right. And so I don't know. It's a safety thing. I don't think that it's going to be a big, was it a drop tackle, was it not? I don't think that Travis Kelce is going to be thinking, oh, I'm going to fall back and get the call here.
Here's my hypothetical situation. What team do the keyboard warriors say the refs favor the most?
The
Chiefs, right? It's got to be the Chiefs. That's how I feel.
The Patriots of the
This is what I see happening. We're in a playoff game. It's tied. Chiefs have the ball. A failed 4th and 25 attempt where Mahomes gets tackled, and then that's a hip drop tackle. Throw the flag on that, and it's too subjective. And so people are going to say, "Oh no, the refs are favoring the Chiefs." They got to. So it's just I don't know how they're going to be able to clearly say like that's a clean tackle, that's not. It's just it's favoring the offense so much.
I don't think that there's going to be a great. I mean, I'm not saying that there won't be calls missed. There is every year, but I don't. A hip drop tackle is pretty distinctly what it is, and it's pretty obvious when you see it what it is. And I just don't think it's going to be a big. I mean,
what was the play?
There's a high likelihood on a hip drop tackle that the offensive player, not the defensive player, the offensive player is getting hurt on a true hip drop tackle. So.
Well, I'm thinking of the play. I don't know if you can envision it in your head. Titans, Rams, Super Bowl, stopped right at the goal line. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hip drop tackle?
I don't.
We got to run the clip. Go find the receipts real quick. I don't know. It'll be interesting. It's another layer.
That was 25 years ago, so it was legal then. So I'm not up in arms about it going too far or whatever.
Yeah,
and like I said, I'm a Florida State fan, and our season was ruined by a hip drop tackle. So.
Yeah.
And I rewind that. I said I don't play for Florida State. Their season.
You have a son that's on the team.
Their season was ruined.
We'll see. It looks like the kickoff rule will be changed as well. I
saw a video today of what it will look like, and it's interesting. It's certainly different. Right now, the kickoffs are a waste of. I mean, it's essentially annoying. I mean, they score, they do the extra point, they go to a commercial break, they come back, they do a 10-second kickoff, touchback, and go to another commercial. Yeah. So at least there's the potential for action. And honestly, the way it's set up, you get through that initial line of the defense, you may be off to the races. There may be a lot more kick return touchdowns than we've seen, which obviously adds excitement. So. Yeah,
Devin Hester's probably not a fan of the rule change
because his records
might be in jeopardy. Yeah. Other sports news on Monday: ESPN's Pete Thamel tweeted that sources are saying Cuonzo Martin and Missouri State are working toward a deal to make him the school's next head coach. He is a former coach there. Most of our listeners probably well aware of that. Since then, he's been at Tennessee. Also, Missouri had a couple of, I think Missouri, I think he took them to a Sweet 16, or maybe it was Tennessee.
I don't know. He went from Missouri State. First of all, last time Missouri State men's basketball won a regular season Missouri Valley Conference championship was Cuonzo Martin was the coach. It certainly came out of left field. There was rumors that, there's all kind of rumors of who was coming.
We'd heard a lot of different people. Yeah.
And but Cuonzo Martin was not one of them. I guess he's currently not coaching, I guess living in Florida, doing a lot of clinics and things like that. So he's not like coming from another school, but just based on reaction online, social media, it seemed very positive. Yeah. Of, you're making a splash. You're making someone that's going to come in here. He's going to, bring kids in. Everyone that, Kyle Weems played on that championship team.
Did he recruit Kyle Weems?
I don't know if he recruited him, but he played for Cuonzo Martin on that championship team. And he said, listen, he basically sounded like he would run through a wall for him today still. So
was it,
he'll get players. And I think, the transfer portal and all of the NIL, I mean, I think it would be a home run hire for Missouri State.
Was it, I'm too young to remember. Was it Henson? And then straight to Martin after that? Was there any in between there? Don't know.
Off the top of my head.
One thing that I've seen, and I think this honestly, his coaching aside, one thing that I've seen on social media and stuff that I think probably played a part for Missouri State in the hire is in recent years, they've been known, the Bears have, for having one of the worst attendance, in the Missouri Valley, and their student section being very poor. You look back at some of those years that were really good under Martin.
They were
packed.
Well, they were winning.
Yeah.
That's the key. I mean, if you're winning and competing for regular season championships, and in this case, winning them, you're going to have a lot more fans, whether it's students or general public.
Yeah, I think
winning cures a lot of things.
I think come next fall, come next November, I think the initial surge of the excitement around the hire, I think will
And I would love to
automatically
see,
show.
we talked about Oakland at the beginning. Oakland had what they called the Oakland Zoo at their games this year.
Gotcha.
It was basically student section, and they would do all these crazy things. They were behind the basket, and like they had one guy was getting a tattoo live during the game. As it's all about having fun and distracting the other team and stuff.
Yeah.
Guys getting a tattoo at the game. There's one guy got a haircut during the game. Just crazy stuff like that. But you'd love to see Missouri State. What is there, 35,000 students at Missouri State? I know it's up there.
Yeah.
20 some thousand.
Yeah.
There's too many students to not have the student section packed. Greek row. And I think Konzo understands not just the X's and O's of basketball, but how to, I think he'll also be out there recruiting students to come out and have some fun. So.
Yeah, 24,000 enrollment at Missouri State. You'd love to see that represented. For people that don't know, and I think most of our listeners are probably aware, MSU is a basketball school. I think it always has been as a mid-major. Obviously, we've seen football have some success here in recent years, but I think they will through and through. Baseball is one thing, but I think they're through and through a basketball school. The Lady Bears have a good following, and so I think it's good for the university if they can get back to that winning way.
You bring in, in theory, assuming this happens, you bring in Konzo Martin, so you got excitement brewing, assuming he can come in and put a roster. Obviously, the team this year, there's already a bunch of guys that have hit the portal. So you come in, you get you get a team put together. You also lock down the state and especially Southwest Missouri. We got plenty of talent coming out of Southwest Missouri that can play at Missouri State. You lock that down. You bring in. Bottom line is the excitement for men's basketball is bigger than it's ever than it's been in a long time at Missouri State. On the flip side, Missouri State has been since Cheryl Burnett and 2 Final Fours on the women's side has been a women's basketball school as well. They're bringing a team back that's got Missouri Valley Conference Championship aspirations, NCAA tournament aspirations. Lacey Stokes and company coming back. I mean, it's going to be the excitement, with Coach Cunningham, in theory, Coach Martin, the 24-25 season on both men and women should be off the charts compared to what it's been at Missouri State.
Yeah. I covered the Lady Bears my last few years in university while I was there, and that was the year that I think they went to the Sweet 16. They lost to Stanford, but it's very exciting whenever the that success starts coming. And you're right. I think the Lady Bears, obviously men's team, there's still a long way to go in terms of who is the coaching hire, what people are we bringing in. You always have to kind of possibly formulate a year of transition in there too. But I think it's when the basketball teams are doing well, I think it's great for Missouri State University.
Absolutely.
We've worked our way back to college basketball. We've got a few minutes left. There was some conversation about this at the start of the tournament. I want to see what your thoughts are on it. Conversation about expanding March Madness. I'm with you.
Honestly, it's probably inevitable because there's money tied to it, and so they're going to find a way. But don't mess with a good. I mean, it's the best sporting event of the year, and obviously, there's going to be people that argue that, the Masters and the Super Bowl and whatever, but it's just, there's nothing that can, Oakland beating Kentucky. I mean, that's, you don't get that, anywhere else on a consistently annual basis. That being said, like I said, it's probably inevitable because money's tied to it. I did see one suggestion, instead of the first 4, it's like the first 8. And so you have like 16 teams. So 8 winners that are feeding into the, perhaps the 1 and 2 seeds or something to that effect. I hate the fact that a team wins their conference tournament. They're an automatic qualifier and they get sent to Dayton. I think that's unfair. I think that Dayton, the first 4 should be the middle of the road, Power 5 schools that, are fighting for bids. That's what I think the first 4 should be, not the conference champions that are automatic qualifiers. I don't think that should be, but.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think 64 is a lot of teams. Obviously, you're always going to have the snubs. That's just part of the dynamic of the tournament. But even right now,
it's 68 now.
Yeah, true. Correct.
And that same thing happened when it went from 64 to 68. You still got 4 teams that are, the first 4 out that are complaining about, not getting in. And
yeah,
honestly, if you're the 69th team instead of 68, play better.
Yeah.
It's not like we're, I don't know.
But I think even say you hypothetically doubled the field, even for a blue blood, even for a 1 or 2 seed, it's hard enough to win 5 games in a row right now and go on a streak to win the tournament. You add another layer to that. I just think you're taking away some of the legitimacy at that point. There's just so much that can happen amongst a 6+ game span, but they're going to be looking at March Madness, and now you've got the college football playoff expanding. That's going to have success. Obviously, people have been wanting it for a while. So I think that all the signs are going to be telling them we have to grow. We have to grow. And it's like, no, like if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And football, it's going to 12 next year. The 13th and 14th teams are going to be complaining about, it's just a fact that if you're not in the tournament. But does the 13th and 14th ranked football teams legitimately have a chance to win 3 or 4 games and win a national title in football? Probably not. Basketball, sometimes you can get hot. You mentioned, we talked about Virginia Commonwealth earlier, Shaka Smart. The year they went to the Final Four, if I'm not mistaken, they started in the first 4.
Oh, really?
They won their first 4 game, got into the tournament, advanced all the way. I think they lost in the Final Four to Butler. And then, but if I'm not mistaken, they started in the first 4 that year.
Wow. Yeah, so we'll see. Time will tell. If you've made it this far in the episode, thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to drop a like, leave a review for us. We've got a lot going on at the Hall of Fame right now. Stay up to date on everything that's going on social media. Recently, just announced a class of inductees for Kansas City on May 19th. A lot of big names in that class that we're very excited for, be able to honor those people for tremendous careers in their fields. But we will have new episodes for you, as always, every Wednesday on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube as well. Byron, anything for the people?
Yeah, just be sure to leave a comment on how wrong Noah is about the drop tackle, but we'll see you next week.
We will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Where the Game Lives On.